So today we are going to study myocardial infarction. We are studying ischemic heart diseases. Ischemia is when the blood supply does not meet the demand, right? Here myocardial ischemia refers to a condition when the myocardial blood supply, that is blood supply to the heart, does not meet the demand of the heart, right? The oxygen and the nutrient demand of the heart is not met. Now, what is myocardial infarction? We are studying myocardial infarction under acute coronary syndromes. Acute coronary syndromes are the acute emergency conditions. For example, unstable angina, the crescendo angina, and the myocardial infarctions. Now, we know whenever these cells, they are deficient in blood supply, they are deficient in oxygen supply, whenever they are deficient in nutrient supply, it leads to a temporary condition called as ischemia, and when that temporary condition is not relieved, then it can lead to cell necrosis. Cell necrosis is cell death. So ischemia is deficient blood supply and cell necrosis is cell death. Cell necrosis, when the cell death takes place because of the deficient blood supply, then it is called as infarction. And when the myocytes, the myocardial tissue dies because of the deficiency in blood supply, then it is called as myocardial infarction. Right? So the difference between infarction and necrosis is the necrosis can happen because of any reason. For example, if somebody's skin is burnt, somebody is having somebody has poured acid over their skin, then the skin cells, the body cells, they die because of the acid or because of the heat. Then that is called as necrosis, cell necrosis. Whereas when the cells die because of the reduced blood supply, then it is called as infarction. Here we are talking about myocardial infarction. So myocardial infarction is commonly referred to as heart attack, right? This happens when the ischemia, when the reduced blood supply is more than the 20 minutes, when the ischemia is prolonged and is severe, then that causes permanent cell death, right? So MI is the risks. The cause for MI, the most common cause for MI is atherosclerosis and the changes in the atherosclerotic plaques. It is more common in males because women are generally protected because of the estrogen in them during their reproductive years, whereas males are more affected by this MI. 45% of the people having MI are greater than the age of 65 and less than 10% are less than the age of 40. So it happens above the age of, more chances of having MI is above the age of 65, and in men it is found more. Now coming to the pathology of the MI, right? Pathology of the MI. So we already know that because of the dyslipidemia, the blood vessels, they develop atherosclerosis, and this atherosclerosis is commonly found in coronary arteries. Coronary arteries, because of the dyslipidemia, undergoes the innermost layer, the tunica intima, undergoes atherosclerotic change, right? And it develops atheromatous plaques in them, which has a central core of lipids, mostly lipids, and surrounded by a layer which is having endothelial lining plus collagen fibers. So this fatty core is surrounded by a fibrous layer, and this fibrous layer is covered by endothelium. Now what happens? Because of the high blood pressure, these atheromatous plaques undergoes several changes. We have already talked about the acute changes in the atherosclerotic plaques. So because of the high blood flow, the because of the high blood flow, the collagen covering the fibrous cap of the erytheromatous plaques, it ruptures and it leads to the exposure of the central core, which is rich in lipids, to the blood. The blood is flowing in this white area. This is one vessel, one sagittal section of the blood vessel, coronary blood vessel. So blood is flowing in this area. The blood, when is exposed to this central core, then the platelets from the blood comes, right, and adhere to the erytheromatous plaque, right, and platelet addition takes place. Now this platelet addition do two things. Number one, as we have learned, the platelets, they releases certain chemicals, for example thromboxane and serotonin, which causes overall vasoconstriction, right, overall vasoconstriction. So the coronary blood vessel undergoes vasoconstriction, it constricts in size, plus these platelets, they also activate the intrinsic and the extrinsic pathways, thereby leading to the conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin and thereby completing the clotting process, and formation of thrombus takes place. So now these erytheromatous plaques are having thrombus over them, and together they are called as thromboerytheromatous plaques, right? So now there are two pathologies. One is erytheromatous plaques, and number two, the thrombus over these erytheromatous plaques. Now these thrombuses, they keep on increasing in size and they completely occlude the blood vessels sometimes, or whenever they occlude the blood vessels more than 90%, then the cell death starts taking place. The myocyte becomes deficient in blood supply and myocytic cell death, the myocardial infarction, starts taking place. So the pre-existing coronary artery erytheromatous plaques undergoes an acute change. They can go, these erytheromatous plaques can rupture, these erytheromatous plaques can erode, ulcerate, or there could be hemorrhagic changes in them. These acute changes leads to, number one, the platelet addition and vasoconstriction because of the release of certain chemicals, right? And secondly, apart from vasoconstriction, they form thrombus over these adhered platelets and atherosclerosis is formed. So now the atherosclerotic plaque, the erytheromatous plaque, one and the same thing, erytheromatous plaques has become atherothrombus plaques and has occluded the blood vessels more than 90%. So within minutes, the thrombus expands partially or completely occlude the vessel lumen, resulting in coronary arterial occlusion, right, which diminishes the blood flow and it causes ischemia. When that ischemia is prolonged, it causes myocyte cell death, the necrosis, which is called as myocardial infarction. Apart from that, there are some biochemical and ultrastructural fine changes also in the cells. So as we know that the reduced blood supply will cause anaerobic production of energy and accumulation of lactic acid, because the lactic acid pathways will be activated. So accumulation of lactic acid in the myocytic cells, plus the production of high energy phosphates, example creatine phosphate and adenosine triphosphate in the myocytes, right? Apart from this, there will be mitochondrial swelling, there will be glycogen depletion, and overall the myocytes, they will be swelled up because of the formation of lactic acids and other creatine phosphates. That will lead to osmosis, that will lead to the swelling of the cells, right? If this state, which is now ischemia, is reversed within 20 minutes, that means within 20 minutes the blood supply is again becomes uninterrupted, the blood supply is again normalized, then it is reversible. If not, then after 20 to 30 minutes the damage becomes irreversible and cells undergoes death process, which is called as myocardial infarction. This infarction is of coagulative necrosis, and the myocytes causes the leakage of cytoplasmic protein or the myocytes protein. We have already talked about this, that the myocytes have cardiac muscle cells and the cardiac cells, and these cardiac cells, the myocytes, they have proteins in them which are rich in troponins I, T, and creatine phosphokinase of myocardial in origin, right, CKMB. So these proteins are released into the blood. So it can be summarized as the pathogenesis can be summarized as the plaques, the atheromatous plaques, they undergo acute changes and there is formation of atherothrombus, right? The plaques have now become atherothrombotic plaques. These atherothrombotic plaques ultimately occlude the coronary artery. When this occlusion is prolonged, right, it leads to prolonged ischemia greater than 20 minutes and it leads to cell death, the myocytic cell death, also called as myocardial infarction. Now this myocardial infarction takes place in three fashions. Number one, transmural infarction. Number two, subendocardial infarction, and number three, multifocal microinfarction. So this is our beautiful heart. We have already studied the blood supply. This is arc of aorta, and at the arc of aorta, the first blood vessel to divide is the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. The left coronary artery again divides into two arteries. The left anterior descending, see it is descending down, right? And this is the anterior surface. This surface is the anterior surface. So left anterior descending branch, LAD, and another one is LCX, left circumflex artery, LCX. So if we take a sagittal section, that is if we cut the heart from here and if we see the layers of the heart, so now this is, let us assume that we have taken the sagittal section from here. So now this is ventricle, this is the left ventricle, this is left ventricle, and this is right ventricle, because left ventricle walls are thick, and this is the interventricular septum, right? And at the periphery, at the pericardial region of this are the coronary artery and the coronary veins, right? So this myocardial tissue is again divided into three layers. One is endocardium, right? Then the thick one is the myocardium, which contains the muscles, and the outer one is the pericardium, which is a two-layer structure having fluid in between them, right? So if suppose there is an atherothrombus formation here, then the blood supply to this part will be reduced and this part will develop infarction if the blood supply is reduced for more than 20 minutes. So let us see different types of infarctions. Number one, there are two major types of infarctions. One is transmural infarctions and other one is non-transmural infarctions or subendocardial infarctions. Let us first study transmural infarctions. So transmural infarctions are the infarctions. Trans means complete. Trans means from one end to the other end, and mural means the surface, right? So this is the sagittal section, and the infarction has taken place from endocardium to pericardium, right? This red here denotes the thrombus. That means the artery here is completely occluded. So the arteries, now these three arteries, this is left anterior descending branch, the LAD. This one is left circumflex branch, and this one is right coronary artery, right? Right coronary artery, the posterior descending branch of right coronary artery. This is the anterior part of the heart, and this is the posterior part of the heart. This is the lateral part of the heart, the left lateral, and this is the right lateral, right? How I can identify that this is left? Because it is having thick walls. So when the infarction is of complete length of the myocardial tissue, the width of the myocardial tissue from endocardium to pericardium, then it is called as transmural infarct. So when this artery is occluded, left anterior descending branch (LAD), then the infarction will be seen in this area. This area is the anterior area and the interatrioventricular septum up to the 2/3, right? Because this LAD supplies to this area. So if it is occluded, then this area will undergo ischemia and ultimately necrosis, and it is called as transmural infarction. If the occlusion is complete, if there is no blood flow, absolutely no blood flow, or the blood flow is greater than 90%. Not 90%, you can say complete occlusion, let us say complete occlusions. Then if the left circumflex artery is occluded, then it will lead to the lateral wall infarction, but it will be of transmural type. The complete wall will be infarcted, right? Similarly, if the posterior descending branch of the right coronary artery is occluded, this one, then it will lead to transmural infarction of the posterior left ventricle. Similarly, the non-transmural infarcts, also called as subendocardial infarcts, right? Why subendocardial infarcts? Because the infarction takes place in the tissue which is below the endocardial lining. So the infarction is called as subendocardial infarction, below the endocardium. So subendocardial infarction takes place when the coronary arteries are not completely occluded. They are more than 90% but not 100% occluded, right? So it leads to subendocardial or non-transmural infarcts. Obviously, transmural infarctions are much more dangerous because they involve complete width of the heart wall, right? So non-transmural infarctions, right, or subendocardial infarctions. Number 3 category is multifocal infarction, right? Multifocal infarctions means when many blood vessels, the coronary blood vessels, are occluded, then it leads to micro infarctions all over the walls of the heart. Right, now let us study transmural infarctions. So transmural infarctions, when there is complete occlusion of the epicardial blood vessels. Epicardial means the blood vessels at the pericardial region, that is the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery and their branches. So when any of these blood vessels, the coronary blood vessels, they are completely occluded, right, it leads to the transmural infarction. Now transmural infarctions, they present with very severe pain, chest pain, and in ECG, ST segment elevation. The ST segment will be elevated, right? That is why this type of infarction is called as STEMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. So in ST elevation myocardial infarction, the infarction is of transmural type, that is the complete width of the heart wall is infarcted, has died. Then second is subendocardial or non-transmural infarctions. In this, only 1/3 of the inner ventricular wall is infarcted. Now left ventricle is very common to get myocardial infarction. Why? Because left ventricle is thickest. It has to pump blood to all over the body. It is thickest and it has good blood supply, and any ischemia in this part leads to myocardial infarction, right? So because of the increased workload in the left ventricle is more susceptible to infarctions. Now in this subendocardial infarctions, the ST segment in ECG shows depression in spite of elevation, right? And this condition is called as NSTEMI. Obviously, the STEMIs are much more dangerous, disastrous than NSTEMIs. The number 3 is multifocal, when there are multiple intramural or intracardiac blood vessels are affected. Now these infarcts, they can also be understood by their location. So this is right coronary artery from the right side of the ascending aorta, and left coronary artery, right, from the left side of the ascending aorta. Left coronary artery again dividing into two parts, left anterior descending branch and left circumflex artery. Now left anterior descending coronary artery is the most common site for the infarctions. This left coronary artery, right, you can, let us say this is anterior descending branch, this is circumflex. Anyways, right, this is most common. 40 to 50% of the occlusions takes place in this artery, and since it supplies to the anterior wall of the left ventricle and also the septum, right, anterior 2/3 of the atrioventricular septum and apex of the heart it supplies, so it causes anterior wall MI. You can see in this picture the anterior wall. See, if this is heart, then this is anterior wall. The wall which we cannot see in this picture at the back side is posterior wall. On this side it is left lateral wall. On this side it is right lateral wall. The upper portion is superior, the lower portion is inferior, right, apart from right and left side. So this is how we divide the heart walls. So the left anterior descending coronary artery occlusions leads to anterior wall MI most commonly, and also anteroseptal MI. Septal means atrioventricular septum. So antero, right, the anterior portion of the atrioventricular septal also is infarcted, and that is called as anteroseptal MI, right. Similarly, the right coronary artery is the second most common artery to get occlusions, the atherothrombotic occlusions, and since it supplies to the posterior inferior wall of the left ventricle, right, at the posterior side this artery goes and it reaches the ventricle here, right, it reaches the ventricle here and it supplies to the posterior inferior wall of left ventricle, thereby causing inferior wall MI, right. Inferior wall MI is caused by right coronary artery, and also it causes posteroseptal MI because it supplies to the posterior 1/3, right. The remaining of the atrioventricular septum, that is the posterior 1/3. See, the anterior 2/3 is supplied by descending branch and the posterior 1/3 is supplied by the right coronary branch, right. So inferior wall MI. Similarly, the left circumflex coronary artery, if it undergoes occlusions, which is the least of all the three, then the lateral wall MI takes place because it supplies to this lateral wall of the left ventricle. So the myocardial infarctions are of two types, NSTEMI and STEMI. Right? They are acute emergency conditions. They are also called as acute coronary syndromes. These acute coronary syndromes are of two types, NSTEMI and STEMI, based on their types of infarction, which is transmural or subendocardial infarctions. The STEMI will be having transmural infarctions, whereas NSTEMI will be having the subendocardial infarctions and also the ST segment elevations. The ST segments will be elevated in STEMIs, whereas they will be depressed or not elevated in NSTEMIs. So let us study NSTEMI first. So NSTEMI, the cause is subendocardial infarction, which is because of the partially occluding thrombus, right? And in STEMIs there will be infarctions, there will be necrosis. So the cardiac necrosis will lead to the presence of biomarkers, that is the cardiac troponin T and cardiac troponin I in the blood. The increase in cardiac troponin T and I in the blood plus creatine phosphokinase CPK-MB or CK-MB levels to be raised in the blood. So first is biomarkers of the cell necrosis, cardiac necrosis, plus any of these three features, which is number one, the pain will be at rest and it will be, the chest pain will be at rest and it will be greater than 10 minutes, number one. Number two, any one of these. Number two, the chest pain will be of recent in origin, right? That means it will not be, the chest pain will not be older than 2 weeks. The previous chest pain will be within 2 weeks. And number three is crescendo pattern. Crescendo pattern, as we know that the crescendo pattern is more severe and more prolonged and more frequent than the previous episodes. So if a person is having the pain, within 2 weeks, the next episode will be of more severe, more prolonged, right? So such crescendo pattern can be seen in NSTEMI, right? So these NSTEMIs, apart from the presence of cardiac necrosis biomarkers, these will be having any one of these three features, any one or more than one of these three features. Right now, NSTEMIs can be differentiated from the unstable angina, which is crescendo angina, by having the absence of biomarkers. Because in unstable angina, the exertion, the pain, the cardiac pain will be greater than 20 minutes, but the markers, the cardiac necrosis biomarkers, the cardiac troponin T, I, and CKMB will be absent. So if they are absent, we call that as unstable angina. It is also called as pre-infarction angina, the angina which is pre to the infarction, pre-infarction angina. And if the cardiac biomarkers of the cardiac necrosis are present, we call that as NSTEMI, the myocardial infarction. Then STEMI, ST elevation myocardial infarction. Now ST elevation myocardial infarction happens because of the transmural infarction, when the coronary artery is completely stenosed, completely occlusive, because of the atherosthrombus, the thrombus formed over the atheromatous plaques, right? And the pain is severe, it is deep, and the pain is very, it may be, the person may describe that pain as heavy, squeezing, crushing, right? Plus there could be sweating, diaphoresis, weakness, nausea, sweating is diaphoresis, vomiting, anxiety, right? The chest pain will be more than the 30 minutes. That is how we differentiate angina and MI. In angina, the pain typically never lasts for more than 20 minutes, and typically it is there for 2 to 5 minutes. So this STEMI can be differentiated from the angina by having two features. Number one, presence of cardiac biomarkers in the blood, the cardiac troponin T, I, and CKMB, plus the pain in angina is relieved by rest, but in STEMI it is not relieved by rest. Even sometimes the STEMI starts even at rest. Person is resting and cardiac chest pain the person will be experiencing cardiac chest pain. There is one more category which is also called as silent MI. So in patients who are elderly, and in women mostly, and in patients with diabetes, mostly in the patient with diabetes, the MI is painless. The person will be having some other symptoms, and these symptoms are called as anginal equivalents. These are dyspnea. The person will be saying that he or she has difficulty in breathing. There will be epigastric discomfort, that is stomach discomfort, nausea, weakness. So these may occur without chest pain. So such conditions are called as painless MI or silent MI. So a person with diabetes most of the times has silent MIs. The symptoms, the common symptoms for both NSTEMI and STEMI are symptoms. There will be chest pain which is more than 10 minutes, and the radiation will be to chest, throat, arms, epigastrium or the back. Anxiety, fear, sweating. Sweating is a very important feature. Fear of impending doom, that the patient will feel that he is going to die. Nausea and vomiting. Dyspnea. The person in silent MI, the person will be dyspneic. The person will say, I cannot breathe properly. Syncope, the person might faint. Apart from this, there will be other signs. There will be sympathetic activation, especially in anterior wall MI. In inferior wall, posterior wall MI, there will be parasympathetic activation. In sympathetic activation will lead to pallor. The person will have instantaneous pallor, sweating, huge sweating over the forehead, over the neck, tachycardia, hypertension. Whereas if parasympathetic wall, if posterior wall MIs are there, then it can lead to bradycardia and hypotension. Person might go into hypotension or hypertension depending on the walls and depending on the sympathetic and parasympathetic activation. Apart from this, there will be certain signs which will be because of the failing heart, impaired myocardial function, for example, cold peripheries. The peripheries will become cold, oliguria, reduced urine, hypotension, narrow pulse pressure, jugular vein pressure will be increased because the heart will be failing. The person might be having third or fourth heart sounds, lung crepitations because there will be backflow of the blood to the lungs, which can lead to pulmonary edema. Some other signs of complications, right? If the MI complications, for example, mitral regurgitation, we will talk about this in valvular defects, and then pericarditis, the person might go into pericarditis. So these are some of the clinical features. Then let us see the investigations. In investigations, ECG will have a specific characteristic changes. These characteristic changes are: within minutes of onset of chest discomfort, as soon as the patient will be having a chest discomfort, the T wave elevates, right? So this is a normal ECG. Number one, this is not a normal ECG. The T wave in this is elevated. Otherwise, it is a normal ECG. So P first upright wave is P wave, which is because of the atrial contraction. Then QRS, which is because of the ventricular contraction, right? And then because of the ventricular relaxation, the T waves, right? So T wave will be increased. T wave will be increased. T wave will be raised, and it will be followed by, after some time, after a few minutes, the T wave will take the ST segment, this ST segment also with it, and the ST segment will also be raised. So it will be followed by ST segment elevation, and after a few hours, right, this will take place in few minutes. After a few hours, the T wave will become inverted. So T wave, which was more upright, now has become inverted, right? And after this, after few days, the T wave will become upright and the Q wave will become more negative wave, and there will be a pathological Q wave, right? The Q wave will be more deeper. So the deeper Q waves in ECG represents an older MI. So these are the changes in ECG. Then cardiac biomarkers. So we know that the cardiac proteins, the cardiac muscles have cardiac specific troponins, cardiac troponin T and I. So these T and I will be raised in blood after the attack, after 4 to 6 hours of the attack, myocardial infarction. After 4 to 6 hours, suppose if right now I am having myocardial infarction, then after 4 to 6 hours, the troponin T and troponin I levels will be raised, and they will be raised up to 7 to 10 days. So up to 7 to 10 days, my blood will show the raised levels of troponin T and troponin I. Whereas the creatine phosphokinase level, CKMB, will be raised within 4 to 6 hours, after 4 to 6 hours, and up to 2 to 3 days, right? 48 to 72 hours. This is how the graph can be understood. So this red one is CKMB, the orange one is troponin T, and the blue one is troponin I. So after 4 hours, these levels will start rising, the T, I, and the CKMB. So let us first talk about CKMB, the red one. The CKMB levels will be raised after 4 to 8 hours, and they will come down after second day or the third day, 48 hours and the 72 hours. At 48 hours, they will come down, whereas the TNT and TNI levels, they will not come down as much, and they will continue to be raised in the blood for 7 to 10 days. Then cardiac imaging, we can take an X-ray of the chest, simple X-ray. Simple X-ray can tell us about the complications. For example, pulmonary edema can be seen in the lungs, or the dissection of the aorta. If the aorta is dissected, if the aorta is having a tear in its intima layer, then that can be seen as the bulging of the aorta in the X-ray. Second is 2D echo. We take the echocardiography. We send the echo waves. We send the high frequency waves, sound waves into the heart, and we see the wall motion abnormalities. The wall means the ventricular wall and the auricular wall, the atrial wall, if their motions is having any abnormality. So regional wall motion abnormalities, RWMA, is seen of the infarcted area. If there is infarction, there will be wall motion abnormalities. The wall at the infarcted area will be moving abnormally. It will not be moving with the heart. It might bulge out or it might even rupture. Then mitral regurgitations might take place, right? If the infarcted area involves the papillary muscles, then those papillary muscles might also get infarcted, and that can lead to the rupture of the papillary muscles, which can lead to mitral regurgitation. We will talk about this in coming classes. Then ventricular septal defects, the septum, the atrioventricular septum, that might be infarcted, right? As we saw in anteroseptal wall MI and the posteroseptal wall MI. So ventricular septal defects could be there, or pericardial effusions could be there, or other complications of MI can be detected through 2D echo. Then number 3 is radionuclide imaging, also called as nuclear heart scan, where we put a radionuclide like thaladium and technetium into the person's blood, and we see the X-ray. We see that radionuclide, which emit radio waves, and which is seen over an X-ray. So we take an X-ray of that person and we see the uptake of the radionuclides by the heart muscle, and if the heart muscles are infarcted, then these radionuclides are not uptaken by that portion, and we can see the thinning of the heart walls at that area. So by radionuclide imaging, we can detect the myocardial infarction. Number 4 is cardiac MRI. We can take an MRI, magnetic resonance imaging of the cardiac muscle, and we can detect the necrosis. Then complications. So 80 to 90% of the cases, they develop complications, right? Some of the people develop so much complications that they even die instantaneously. Sudden cardiac death is found in 25% of the cases. So that means 1 in 4 cases dies because of the myocardial infarction. If 4 patients have come to the OPD with myocardial infarction, then 1 of them is going to die. Next is congestive heart failure. We will talk about this in heart failure, where the right heart failure, if the infarction is in the right heart failure takes place, or if it is in the left heart, then both hearts might fail, right? Because the left heart is the major pumping portion. Then ventricular dilatations, the ventricular dilatations, the ventricle wall which is most susceptible to the myocardial infarction, might get infarcted, and that infarcted portion might dilate because that is weak in structure, so it might dilate. Then arrhythmias, right? Because of the myocardial infarction, the person might go into arrhythmias, that is, the rhythm of the heart is disturbed. Person might be having tachyarrhythmias. The person's heart might rupture because of the severe myocardial infarction. It might even rupture, leading to the leakage of the blood from the heart. And last is mural thrombosis or the thromboembolism. So the infarcted area of the heart has cell death. So the endocardium layer has died, the endocardial tissue has died because of the infarction. So that leads to the formation of thrombus inside the heart, which leads to the further thrombosis of the blood vessels of the heart, mural thrombosis, or that mural thrombosis, those thrombosis can travel to the distant arteries, for example in the brain, in the kidney, and can cause thromboembolisms. Right, so keep studying and keep